Next, I would like to introduce you to Vera Krimmer. She's a student at our faculty at the School of Architecture of the University of Stuttgart, and she's one of a number of students who are driving and demanding a reflection on the curriculum, on teaching methods, on architecture as such, from a somewhat feminist intersectional perspective. I think Vera would prefer the term intersectional. Last year she received a scholarship from the Arch Plus magazine in Berlin, and she contributed to an issue on that very subject, on intersectional feminist spatial practice. And we invited her today to present her take on feminism and modern architecture, and also on the historiography of modern architecture from a feminist perspective. Vera.
Hello, thank you for the invitation, and hello everybody. Does that continue, or? Okay, good. We talk about modernity and about modernism, and as architects and urban planners, we agreed on a certain way of reading and on canonization. Looking into feminist and intersectional approaches towards modernity, I continue to wonder what our perceptions of the modern would look like if there was more than this one truth, or in fact, if the true story wasn't partly obliterated. Would we stick to our narrative of the heroic genius? And would we still see modernity as a journey of emancipation? Because some people in architecture have been erased from popular narration. Women, people of color, queer people, or even those from the global south. The voids are slowly being filled, but structural rethinking has not yet taken place. The assumption that there were no women architects or no women in architectural practice and theory before the mid-20th century persists, even though we know now that their forgetting has more to do with the way how we think and write about architects. For instance, the monograph as the dominant form of modern architectural historiography was predominantly reserved for male protagonists and promoted the associated idea of the solo genius. And female architects, on the other hand, who for professional and private reasons had always practiced mostly in collaborations, were doomed to collective oblivion, or their names have been dissolved in the mementos of great men. The best known victim of this mindset, we all know, is Denise Scott Brown, whose husband and office partner, Robert Venturi, was solemnly honored with the Pritzker Prize in 1991 for their joint life's work. A case that, by the way, was repeated in 2012 with the award for China's Office Amateur Architecture Studios founder Wang Xu, without his partner, co-founder, and wife, Lu Wenyu. The most recent victim to this mindset is Marlene Möschke-Pölzig, who self-designed and built her family home. And the house was then marked, as you can see here, with a plaque indicating only that the great architect Hans Pölzig has lived there. And it fell prey to demolition last autumn. The question whether the building would have been a listed building if her husband had designed it is up for debate. And the question shows that simply filling the gaps in canonization is not enough, but a structural overthrow of thinking might be necessary. While on the one hand, some actors, as I said, were excluded from the narrative of modernity, on the other hand, the heroes have been unquestionably reproduced and continue to stand on pedestals today without the need to contextualize their work. We heard both these names already today. Adolf Loos and Le Corbusier, to name but two, served this cult of the genius and dominate architectural storytelling and teaching to this day, ignoring the pedosexual crimes of the one and the sexist, racist, and Nazi glorifying activities of the other. When moving from planning to using perspective, marginalized groups are excluded even more, and we can see parallels to that false claim of universalism that I talked about earlier in my introduction. A functionally separated city with its division into public and private spheres is only separated along these dividing lines from a patriarchal perspective, a male perspective. For women who in the modern ideal of the heterosexual nuclear family manage the domestic realm and perform private care work, the home does not equal leisure and retreat, but unpaid full-time work. And the public space, in the form of the car city, that is oriented towards the mobility of the working man, means long distances for women running errands and, moreover, often spaces of fear for vulnerable groups. This ideal persists despite the fact that an increasing number of households include both employed partners, and the functionally separated city is slowly disappearing as a norm. Today's view of modernity is often a formal one, but let's not make it too easy for ourselves. If we reduce a failed emancipation project to questions of form, we neglect the responsibility that comes with the society-building dimension of our profession. And we deprive ourselves from the chance of gaining insight for further questions. Especially if we want to face today's crisis, we must overcome the old ideals and create new narratives. The age of starchitects might be over, but our office structure and our teaching culture are still patriarchally structured. In Germany, the construction industry comes last in terms of the proportion of women in the industry average. And although 53% of architecture graduates in 2019 were female, their share of the profession was only 30%. Design shapes our world and reproduces or contributes to the dissolution of discriminating structures. Another crisis we face today, and that we as architects and urban planners could worsen or diminish, is the climate crisis. Now is the time for less heroism and more collaborative, feminist, intersectional, interdisciplinary, and bottom-up approaches in architectural practice, theory, and teaching. Zooming in, as designers, we have the ability to break down biases and deconstruct gender assignments or old understandings of sex and gender. We can ensure that care work continues to be seen as a female issue, or that it is finally negotiated across society. For instance, we can design buildings that implement care work as a collective issue, like Barcelona-based architecture studio La Colle, who in their housing and office projects focus on strengthening collaborative structures of residence through design. They call it mutual care. We can build for new family models beyond the nuclear concept, like Summa Confermas San Remo, with its flexibly organized concepts of Durchwohnen, pierced flats, and La Colle's La Borda, with its elastic flats, plus connectable possibility spaces. And we can dismantle hierarchies and glass ceilings in our very own practices and office structures. Allow employees to take credit for their own designs and reorganize ourselves in cooperatives like La Colle and Assemble, to give an example. After all, the questions are not limited to feminism, but are intersectional ones. We can build against women's sense of insecurities through neighborhood development, leading to gentrification, and expose multi-discriminated women, such as homeless, disabled, poor, and women of color, to even greater unsafety. Or instead, by designing inclusively, we have the chance to bring communities together. We can house old or disabled women and men and others in segregated spaces or come up with concepts to take care of them amidst society. We can indirectly exclude women and trans people by not planning toilets for them in public spaces or deny non-binary people their identity by not considering them in our planning. Or we could facilitate their participation in society. With our decisions, we can actively include or exclude people. Architecture means participation if we understand it as more than questions of form. Building or not building means care work for a broken planet. Planning and constructing means creating spaces for a society of tomorrow. I would like to close with an iconic image of a modern building that we all know by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. We need to find a whole new narrative. Let's this time bring all people towards and beyond architecture. Thank you.